In today's video, we are talking about the game design of Cocoon, a sci-fi puzzle platformer adventure game that requires you to master world-leaping mechanics to unravel a cosmic mystery. In this game, you explore worlds within worlds that showcase beautiful stylized art of different biomes scattered with ancient biomechanical machinery, encapsulated in a masterful game level design that does completely away with UI and that has you solving complex interspatial puzzles with a surprisingly ultra simplistic input mapping. Hello everyone, on this channel I give you a deeper and wider look at the whole world of design. I look into architecture, games, products, amongst many other fields to do specific design breakdowns as well as talk about theory, philosophy, and lifestyle relating to the design world. Cocoon is a game directed by game designer Jip Carlson, who also designed Limbo and Inside. This time around, he is part of Geometric Interactive. Cocoon is published by Annapurna Interactive and released on September 29th of 2023 for Steam, PlayStation, Switch, and Xbox. Within its first year, Cocoon has already won multiple awards and with good reasons. Cocoon starts with a simple and short cutscene that introduces the game's art style alongside the animation quality you can expect from the game. You also get to see for the first time what is to be the overall biomechanical insect theme of this world, alongside the introduction of the avatar, a peculiar looking insect humanoid fella. Once the cutscene is over, you are dropped into the start of the level, a level that showcases the beautiful environment quality you can expect for the rest of the game. The game starts with no further indication, no UI elements telling you to try this or that button to execute specific actions. The game just lets you be. With no further input from the game, one has no other choice but to explore. No other button aside from the joystick to move seems to serve any purpose at this time. At this point, I also notice I cannot change my view, so this is a static isometric view game. As you start exploring the level and go down a set of stairs, the stairs are triggered and disappeared behind you. What the designers are doing here is introducing this level dynamic to the player in a moment where it doesn't really matter. There is nothing to go back to at this point. The designers are informing of level thresholds that when passed will have an effect on the game level. You then encounter a platform that changes color when you are on it, and you notice that your avatar starts humming its wings. These two triggers together are used to send a very specific and clear signal to the player. At this location, the avatar, and by proxy the player, is ready to do something. But what that is, I don't know. So after waiting a few seconds and seeing that I was not going to receive any UI assistance, I started to explore. My first intuition is that this spot is somewhat interactable, so I start exploring the input options on the controller, and voila! My first and most obvious first attempt pressing the bottom face button yields results. I have modified the environment from this platform in such a way that it furthers my exploration of the level. I also noticed that from the platform to the level area that was modified, there is a trail of small spheres letting me know that I can expect to be able to identify what exactly these platforms affect in the level. Even though we have not seen a UI element in the screen so far, that does not mean that the designers are without tools to guide players throughout the game. In this case, this trail is what is known as a diegetic element. This means that the element in question can be seen by both the player and the avatar, in contrast with an undiegetic element, which only the player can perceive. The change of color in the platform, the humming of the avatar wings, the spheres on the floor, all are being used to guide the player through the game in a way that permits immersion and flow without being shattered by exogenous elements, like pausing the game to show what button to press at what time. As you keep moving forward, you then arrive at a closed off area. You can't move forward or backwards, but there is a clear element that is the focus of the space. Not expecting any UI help at this point, I walk next to this orb and press the bottom face button once again to see if that works. And it does! The avatar takes the orb onto its back, and as I walk with it, I notice that another level modification is being triggered. You are then presented with your first navigational puzzle that builds on your understanding of how the platforms work. You stand on them and press the button to trigger a level modification. In this case, the platform moves. You're then introduced to another type of interactable element, runes on the floor that require you to hold down the bottom face button for a few seconds to trigger an event. You are then presented with an ominous looking giant door that is clearly presented as the goal for the level, but with no real way of interacting with it just yet. leaving you to keep exploring what else is around. As you explore and move forward in the level, your way back is blocked by these geological mechanical stalagmites that are triggered. This comes as no real surprise as you have already encountered these and further incentivizes and confirms the player to keep moving forward. You then arrive at a space that presents you with these rune-like elements that, when interacted with, provide clear audio and visual feedback that they have been triggered. Once all of these runes have been triggered, the player is presented with a new type of platform. At this point, you already know that you need to get on it and press the bottom face button to activate it and see what it does. This platform takes you out of the world you have been in so far, which is a very big moment in the game, and presents the player with what is clearly a boss to be fought. But as soon as you see the boss, it disintegrates into the sphere next to you, the one you came out of and which holds a strong orange color, just like the world environment you were navigating in just a few seconds ago. You are then left in a very confined, closed space with nowhere else to go and nothing else to do except to interact with the sphere. So you get next to the sphere and press the bottom face button to pick up the sphere in the same fashion you have already picked up other orb-like elements in the game. And this is something that is done continuously and masterfully in this game. The isolation to create focus of interactions and subtle guidance and the building up of previously introduced mechanical notions, so the game develops in an intuitive manner in the player's head. Once you grab the sphere, the area opens up and you are set to explore this matrix-like level with the world sphere on your back. As you explore this new world, you encounter a platform that seems to be able to take in the sphere. By pressing the bottom face button, you place the sphere onto this platform and it activates and creates new pathways for you to move forward in the level. And with this, the basics of the game's mechanics have been introduced for the most part, and from this point on, the designers present the players with all sorts of environmental/spatial puzzles where the player has to manage the location, activation, retrieval of the sphere, having to drop the sphere in an intricate piping system, timing shifting gates, coordinate moving platforms, all while designers keep developing bit by bit the mechanics to interact with the level, like jumping platforms, and all while just using the bottom face button. As the player progresses through the level, they are eventually presented with a new kind of platform, one that permits the player to jump into the world within a sphere. At this particular point in the game, there's nothing really further to explore in the orange sphere world, and the designers limited the available area to explore in that level with the stalagmites, so the player can identify quickly and easily that there's nothing further to do in this world apart from understanding that I can leap back into the worlds in the spheres via this specific platform. This is another example of how masterfully this game introduces complex mechanics without having a guided UI tour, but rather through great level design that fits perfectly in the natural flow of gameplay and exploration. Once players realize there is nothing to do in this world, they jump back with a clear direction of further exploration in the hub world. At this point, you encounter for the second time the puzzle type that makes you trigger the rune elements. But this time around, you notice that nothing happens when you trigger all 5 runes, and they just pop back up. You then notice that this time around, each element has a different rune on them, and it becomes clear that the puzzle requires a specific trigger sequence to be solved. Once you figure out how to determine that sequence from the environmental information available, a flying little contraption with a dash of a personality is released. You notice that it follows you around, even when you jump in and out of worlds. By exploring, you learn that your friend can take down the erected stalagmites, giving the player access to those areas. As you keep exploring, you're able to find these hidden areas that hold petrified creatures known as moon ancestors, and that seems like you're the only one that can awake them and free them. You also find out that your friend is the key to opening the big, ominous gate presented to you earlier in the level. You encounter your first boss fight, the creature that disintegrated into the sphere earlier, and you really do not know what to expect. The game so far has shown that this is not an action-focused, kinetic-oriented game. So you ask yourself, am I really gonna fight a boss with just one button? Really? Surely I will be able to use more buttons, right? Wrong. The designers masterfully made it where you are fighting the boss with just one button. The boss ends up having a set behavior pattern of movements and attacks that feels like a puzzle to solve, which feels like a good balancing act. You navigate the levels through spatial navigational puzzles, and when you fight the boss, it's more of a movement behavioral puzzle. As the fight starts, you intuitively discover what you have to do. You see this earth splashing spot. You get close to it, you press your bottom face button, and you grab an orb-like creature. You press the bottom face button to explore what happens, and you find out that it explodes, but nothing happens to you. From there on, you quickly put together that this is the way to fight the boss, at which point it is already awakened and chasing you. If you end up being captured by the boss, you don't lose a life, since there is no life system in this game. You are instead thrown out of the world, at which point you jump back into the world and start over the fight. I found this very interesting and fitting this game perfectly. By avoiding a life system for the player and the boss, the designers maintain the game design simple, but by being pushed out of the world and having to restart the fight, there's still a penalty to be incurred when the player fails. I would even argue that it's more daring this way, as the player cannot make even one mistake. This being pushed out of the world when you lose also brings focus to the core mechanic of the game, the leaping in and out of worlds, and drives the point that this is something very accessible and fundamental to the game. It's also very puzzle-like in the sense that the puzzle, that is the boss fight, restarts, but it's the same pattern of behavior every single time. So it's easier and easier to get further into the puzzle as you keep trying. Almost like the very early and rudimentary boss AIs from early days of game design. But not as static and repetitive, this boss has enough variation to adapt to the player to make it challenging enough without being overwhelming. Once you defeat the boss and it disintegrates into the world in a very Death Stranding-esque way, you get access to the orb's ability, which you can now use to further explore other worlds, and which activates whenever it is on the avatar's back. Once you leap out of the world into the Matrix or Hub world, you're able to use the sphere's ability, which in this case is sort of a Pathfinder mechanic, where you now have a circumference around you that lets you see and walk on these special digital bridges. This not only looks very cool, but it also expands where you can travel to and articulates the game level experience. The paths themselves tend to be relatively straightforward with very little exploration to them, which in this case is the right thing to do since the mechanic already brings enough to the table. By showing you and giving you limited access to these otherwise invisible bridges, there's really no need to overcomplicate this experience when you're trying to navigate through a complicated and invisible spaghetti junction basically to end up at a dead end. The designers let you know pretty quickly where are the dead ends without taking them away, which still makes the experience itself feel articulated enough where you still have to be engaged to choose the paths. You're just able to quickly identify and rectify when you chose the wrong path. From here on, this mechanic gets progressively intertwined with previous mechanics to introduce complex and compounded navigational puzzles. For example, coordinating automated robots' locations to trigger events in the level. As you keep progressing through the hub world, you eventually find the next world sphere. Finding a new world is exciting as you now look forward to exploring the world itself, but you are also looking forward to what abilities it will grant you and how that further articulates the puzzles you will encounter. The boss is once again clearly presented to the player before gaining access to the world. Once you jump into this new world, you immediately feel the contrast of this world against the first world, and even the hub world. This world's base color is green versus orange, as seen in the spheres. This world is full of water, the other is a desert. The biomes are very different, but still full of life and interactable moments with the environment. At this point in the game, you discover that you can bring worlds within worlds, and this moment feels like one of the peak moments of the game experience. It is a very cool feature that, thanks to the masterful level design, you discover through a subtle but effective guidance, which makes it feel even more exciting as it feels like your very own discovery. And once this possibility is introduced, the level design requires you to now make use of your discovery to traverse portions of this world, creating a very complex and highly articulated, multi-dimensional navigational puzzle. And all of this while being incredibly elegant and intuitive about it. From here, the world's levels are intertwined in very intricate ways. For example, where you need to find the companion to move forward in the green sphere, in the red sphere, but you're not able to get to it unless you bring the green sphere into the red sphere and then get out with a companion and the sphere to then switch it up and go into the green sphere with the red sphere and your recently released flying companion by introducing these robots that are looking to stop your companion's passage. And it's up to you to find how to make a way for it to keep progressing alongside you. In one of the puzzles, you learn that you can jump in and out of the world to avoid events happening in that world and then jump back or bring the sphere in and out to bypass in-world obstacles. This was another very exciting moment for me, especially when I saw that the reflection on the portal pool is not an unrelated imagery representing the world, but an actual reflection of the state of the world in that sphere, at least for that frame, and that was enough to convince my brain and tickle. Once you get to the boss, you immediately perceive how different it is from the previous boss, as you start to try and figure out how to defeat it, changing from an environmental puzzle to a behavioral puzzle once again. In this case, you have to pick up these water balloons that help you move more freely and that you have to explode close to the boss while avoiding attack, movements, and the ghost version of this boss chasing you around. Once you win the fight and as the boss starts to disintegrate, you start to wonder what new abilities will this sphere give you and wonder how many more worlds are there exactly. Once you hop out of the world, you clearly see that the red sphere is inside the green sphere and you have no way of retrieving it, and you realize that this is a way to move more than one sphere at a time. You also notice that in the hub world, a strange new pillar of green smoke with vines and some type of space flower on it is now present in the game level, and you quickly make the association with the potential new ability. So you pick up your green sphere and make your way to that pillar of smoke, and when you press the bottom face button, the pillar of smoke turns solid and pushes you up like an elevator would. This new mechanic now introduces a more dramatic and drastic vertical elevation change for the level design and articulation of the puzzles. As you keep exploring it, you figure out that you can also stand on a solid pillar and activate it for it to turn back into smoke and take you down. You also notice that when you activate the mechanic, all pillars flip their material state all across the level. And again, this notion is first introduced before being required to be understood to solve a puzzle. Once this mechanic is introduced, it is the only mechanic used for a bit in the environmental puzzles to make you focus on it and really grasp it. And the designers even locked the other spheres inside this one so you wouldn't even be tempted. At a certain point, the designers then want you to focus back on this mechanic of worlds being tucked into another world and want to make the point that this folding goes both ways. And they present the players with a number of navigational puzzles that requires the player manages the two spheres in and out of each other to clear the areas of the level. At this point, you also notice that your flying companion is not just the key to opening the gates, but it also serves as a guide in tough moments where its light beam focuses on the direction and starts blinking as a means to guide you. This is done in a very subtle way that comes into focus as a second to third layer of information perceived as you're figuring out the solutions to the puzzles. And once again, you see how a companion from one world is the key to progressing in another world, furthering cementing the intertwinedness of these spheres and levels. You then make your way to the third sphere, where once again, the boss disintegrates before your very eyes, this time into a purple sphere. Once you enter the world sphere, you immediately feel the contrast against the other worlds, this time around, not just in color, but also in spatial typology. This world's level is more fragmented and enclosed than the other two and has a feeling of being cavernous and dark. At this point in the game, you get introduced to the sphere carriers that get activated when you place a sphere on them. Once activated, they will follow you around like little automatons. You then have to guide these carriers through the level and position them in specific spots or insert themselves in specific inlets to trigger events, which feels a lot like the role and gameplay of your flying companion, but articulated in a terrestrial manner. The AI in this game is fairly simple but suitable for the game design, and its simplicity is well used. For example, your flying companion, once released, sticks to your side relentlessly and only leaves your side when captured by these robots that return it into a cocoon-like state, which impedes your companion to follow you until released again. This capturing and releasing is used in a negative way, mechanically speaking, impeding and being a cost the player has to incur as a penalty in the game level, until it actually becomes the key to solving one of the puzzles, in which you have to capture your companion in this cocoon-like state so it will not follow you outside of the world. world. So then you can pick up the sphere and smuggle your companion past a robot on another world. They have turned a negative mechanic into a positive one, and for me it's one of the moments reflecting how the designers exploit the mechanics and the core theme of intertwining worlds. The third boss fight is all about introducing the teleportation mechanic, where to win the boss fight you have to avoid the falling platforms by coordinating and time your location in relation to your teleportation location while you try to get this bomb flower to hit the boss. Your movement is periodically hindered by a change in floor material, which makes you depend on your teleportation ability even more. Once you defeat the boss, you get access to the sphere's ability. You can now basically transport your sphere wherever there is one of these purple sphere mushrooms. This new ability helps you to navigate a whole new set of puzzle types, where you can now leave your sphere behind either to trigger a sustained event or to pass through obstacles too narrow for the sphere to go through while being able to recuperate it further along the path. The third world is where you start to get a more clear picture pertaining the story of the game. In this section of the game is where you see what looks like some kind of military formation of insect soldiers that look just like you but petrified in time. This gives you a few narrative notions. For example, you're not unique and you are part of an insect race, but are you the last one left? Others have made it to where you are, but what were they doing here? Also, and maybe most importantly, what petrified them? Then we enter what feels like the last section of the hub world, where you are required to untangle all the worlds from each other. At this point, the player is presented with 3 sections of game level that rely solely on each sphere's abilities to be accessed and resolved, which is different from what we have been seeing so far, where the spheres are dependent on each other to be able to progress. You have the green sphere area, using the green sphere ability, and the mechanical carrier robots. Once you clear that level, a mysterious black amoeba-like creature emerges and takes you back to the center. The orange sphere area makes you use its ability to be able to clear the level. Here you have to time triggering gates with falling carriers from the fading digital bridges to be able to clear that level. Once cleared, you awaken a similar being as the first level. The purple sphere area has you timing the carrier position with jumping and snapping the sphere all at the correct time to be able to clear the level and awaken the creature once again to take you back to the center. Once you clear all 3 areas, you are given a leaping platform. But you notice that all your spheres are held inaccessible to you by the black beans, and you notice that you're already in the hub world. So where is this platform taking you to? You are then presented with the notion that all this time you were in the world, and as you encounter its boss for the first time, it disintegrates, and now you have this world to solve with all other 3 worlds in it. The world is very contrasting to the other ones, feeling like a pure machine world, like the real hub world or the real Matrix. In contrast with the other ones, which felt like they had strong biological components to their mechanical environmental design. Here you're given the task of retrieving another flying companion to take to the first hub world and open the gate. Once you open the gate, you're ready to fight the boss of the world, which feels like a relative short time between the first encounter with it and when you get to fight it. Once you start the boss fight, you are given time to figure out the core mechanics before confronting the boss. Here, the floor is covered with the similar material from the previous boss that restrains your movement. But here you are given the ability to fly a good span from these clear spots on the floor. From there, it is a waiting game for the boss to try to hit you, for it to miss, have its leg crystallized so you can smash it off. Do that to all of its legs and you win the fight. Once you win, the sphere's powers is unlocked. You can now stand on these floor hieroglyphs and you're able to shoot an energy ball that clears away these mysterious black floating diamonds you have been seeing all this time in all of the worlds, but that you had no idea how to interact with them. This instantly lets you know that somehow you will make your way to all previous worlds, at least one more time. As you progress through the hub world, shooting these floating diamonds to clear passage for your travels, you arrive at the final boss, who just happens to steal all of your precious world spheres and flees. You then have to clear the level by solving puzzles that rely on this new ability. When you catch up to the boss again, you're presented with a set of puzzles that are very different from the other boss fights. This is not a behavioral pattern puzzle, it is a timing and pattern recognition puzzle where you need to hit the diamonds within a certain amount of unknown time while avoiding obstacles and shifting diamonds. Once you clear the set of challenges presented to you, you then engage the boss in a 1-versus-1 match, where an orb of energy is hid between you two in what feels like a very dangerous ping pong game. Once you win the match, the boss willingly gives you back one of the spheres before disappearing. This sets in motion a structured revisiting of the worlds with this new power of the white sphere. Instead of exposing the player to all of the worlds at the same time, the designers are using this gradual recovery of the worlds as a way to guide the players and set a specific sequence of worlds to re-explore. At this point, we discover that energy blasts from the white sphere can be blasted into another sphere and have it shoot objects within that world. This establishes a new relationship between the worlds you are managing. You can jump in and out of the worlds, fold worlds within worlds, bring objects from one world to another world, and now they have a cause and effect relationship between them, which intertwines the game level in a whole new way. You now have to coordinate what happens in one world to get the results you want in the other world. Once you use this new mechanic to clear that area, you arrive at your second encounter with the boss. And at this point, with the challenges being more articulated but following the same typology, you have enough cognitive bandwidth to wonder, why is the boss not attacking me? Why does it look like it is observing me or evaluating me? Once you clear these set of challenges, the sequence of events unfolds the same as your last encounter, albeit with a more intense game of energy ping pong. Once you win, you recover another sphere, this time the orange one. You then proceed to get access to a whole new part of the level in the orange sphere, where you need the green sphere to clear. Here you discover that you don't need the portal to be able to jump out of a sphere. In this case, within the orange world, you open a rift that gives you access to the hub world, the white world. And here is where the tangling of the worlds really gets complex. For example, in one of the puzzles, you have to align a world inside a world so that when the blast of energy hits the first world, it travels into the second world in the right direction to activate the ability in that third world. I know, bunkers. On the third and last boss challenge, you go through the same cycle, having the boss observe you while you do a set of more difficult challenges before facing it one last time in a deadly, more intense match of ping pong. Once you win, it gives you the last sphere in its possession, willingly. Well, you can see that it is not beneficial to it at all, and this raises another question: why? But the euphoria of winning and wondering what happens next overtakes that question. You're then given access to the purple world once again, to activate the black diamond in it and progress to what you expect at the remaining portions of the game level, which takes you to the green world and orange world, in which you can have the green orb within the green orb. Inside the purple world, you open a rift into the green world, which now means that you can fold worlds into themselves. I know, keeps getting crazier and crazier. To open the final gate, you're presented with one last puzzle, where you have to specifically fold the worlds into each other in a specific order to open the final gate. So, the process of retrieving all spheres to then reorganize them triggers one last intense session of jumping into worlds to untangle what you had to tangle together in the first place to get to this point, which from a design perspective is making a really intense use of this mechanic in a very short window of time to almost cement into the player's mind that this is the core mechanic of the game. This is the foundation of your experience. Once you open the gate, it is revealed to be a rift into the orange world, and you end up in what looks like the very beginning of the game, where some sort of hidden shrine erects. You make your way to it and activate it. And to your surprise, you turn into a version of what looks like one of the bosses that you have been fighting all this time. Then you have a scene very reminiscent of Men in Black, where you are shown how all the worlds are connected and even how one world expels another world in what seems to be the birth of a solar system that you are now part of, guarding, leaving the player to ponder what feels like a profound philosophical question out of a very focused mechanical and puzzle-based game that at the end turns philosophical and cosmic. Cocoon is a game that uses a very unique, interesting, world-leaping dynamic mechanic and expands on it in a very complex and interesting way, while surprisingly avoiding the use of any in-game UI elements to guide the player, and the UI that they do use outside the game is minimalistic. The masterful level design is what truly makes this game work, as it guides the player to focus and discover what they need to learn to be able to progress in the game, and this is something truly amazing, as the complexity of the mechanics and the interweaving of the levels is highly complex. The elegance of this game is further emphasized by the fixed screen perspective and minimalistic input mapping. You only use the joystick for movement and the bottom face button throughout the whole game to be able to navigate this multi-dimensional world folding game, which is amazing how this level of complexity can be navigated with such minimal input options in such a comfortable way, which again attests to the great overall sequencing and guiding of players in this game, making it feel intuitive and immersive. The soundscape of this game is not memorable, at least not for me, unlike Journey or Jusant, for example. In this game, I have no recollection of a theme song, for example, while its sound effects weren't good enough to make the environmental interactions feel alive. The themes found throughout the game art are very reminiscent of a lot of sci-fi lore themes for me, from Men in Black to Alien, from Death Stranding to The Matrix, amongst more. The overall theme of the game, from art to mechanics, relate very well to the limited but still meaningful philosophical twist presented at the end of the game as a final note or cherry on top of the game experience, where it does come as a surprise, generating a mix of emotions, as you're both a bit horrified that you are now a bad guy and excited that you are witnessing the birth of a solar system, followed by the moral and cosmic questions of their implications of this whole game traversal. Like, was this all a test to see if I could protect the whole solar system? Protect it from what? Or am I just a cog that has changed locations in a cosmic machine, and now my destiny is to be defeated for another solar system to be born down the line? And with that said, we have arrived at the end of this video. If you liked the video, make sure to click that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this link. These are actions that cost you very little, but help me in a very big way to grow the channel and tell the YouTube algorithm to show this video to more people. Down in the description, I have a few videos I think you might enjoy. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on the game. I would love to hear your insights or observations for this game and start a conversation in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.